An ordinary female architect unexpectedly catches the attention of the notoriously demanding billionaire Harrison Ford during a presentation for a new development project. Neither of them could have imagined that this fateful encounter would intertwine their lives forever, in ways they never saw coming. The late afternoon sun spilled across the sleek skyline of downtown Dallas as Harrison Ford studied the blueprints sprawled out in front of him. Plans for what would become his boldest undertaking yet. A luxury complex blending upscale residences, high-end offices, and a premier shopping plaza. At 35, Harrison was a poster boy for modern success. His wealth climbed steadily, and his name alone could unlock doors in every major city. "These plans don't do it for me, Guillermo," Harrison muttered, adjusting his silk tie as he pointed at the scattered documents on the conference table. "I don't want ordinary. I want something that'll shake up the industry, make our competitors stop in their tracks." Guillermo Rojas, his seasoned project manager, ran a hand through his graying hair and sighed. "I hear you, Harrison, but we've already rejected 5 proposals. Time's ticking, and we've got to break ground if we want to stay on schedule." "Then bring in more architects," Harrison said with unshakable confidence. "There has to be someone in this city with a vision worth building." 3 days later, Harrison sat once again in the boardroom, unimpressed after 4 more interviews. Then the door opened, and in walked someone entirely unexpected. Olivia Bennett didn't exactly blend in with the room full of tailored suits and flashy watches. She wore a simple yet elegant dress, modest heels, and carried a presentation folder tucked neatly under her arm. "Good afternoon, Mr. Ford," she said firmly. "Apologies for being late. Traffic on I-35 was brutal." Harrison gave her a slow once-over, noting her poised presence and indigenous features mixed with a modern urban grace. "Punctuality is crucial in my line of work, Miss Bennett, Olivia Bennett," she said, meeting his gaze with quiet strength. "But I promise I'll make the wait worthwhile." Her steady voice caught Harrison off guard. He was used to people shrinking under his gaze, not holding it. Without waiting to be asked, she opened her folder and laid her designs on the table. "I've studied the land, the neighborhood," she began. "Downtown is already flooded with cold, soulless towers. My design breaks that mold. It fuses clean, modern lines with architectural elements drawn from Mexican heritage, something that speaks to the past while embracing the future." As she walked him through her vision, Harrison found himself unexpectedly intrigued, not just by the concept, but by the woman behind it. There was something in her deep brown eyes, an intensity, a conviction, that pulled him in. "Where did you study, Miss Bennett?" he asked, trying to mask his growing interest. "UNAM, with a master's from Barcelona," she replied. "I'm originally from New Mexico, but have led projects across the country." "New Mexico," Harrison murmured, picturing the cobblestone streets and vibrant markets from a long-ago business trip. "That explains your attention to tradition." Olivia gave him her first smile, and it lit up the room. "Tradition and innovation aren't opposites, Mr. Ford. In fact, I think the most original ideas are born when we respect our roots and still look forward." Their meeting stretched for 2 more hours. By the time it ended, Harrison was certain he'd found not only the architect for his landmark development, but a woman who'd stirred something inside him he hadn't felt in years. "Miss Bennett, your proposal is intriguing," he said finally. "I'd love to continue this conversation over dinner. Are you free tonight?" Olivia looked surprised, but her response was composed. "I appreciate the offer, Mr. Ford, but I'd prefer to keep things professional. We can continue first thing tomorrow in your office, if that works for you." Harrison wasn't used to hearing no, but rather than feel slighted, he was captivated. Her refusal only deepened his curiosity. "As you wish. Tomorrow at 9, he agreed, offering his hand. As their fingers touched, a jolt ran through him, sharp and unexpected. Watching her leave the boardroom, Harrison knew this woman had just upended his world, though he had no idea just how much. That night, Olivia returned to her small but vibrant apartment in the Oak Cliff neighborhood, miles away from Harrison's sprawling mansion in Highland Park. While he slept on sheets with thread counts too high to remember, she woke up early to sunlight slipping through handmade curtains, her home decorated with New Mexican textiles and potted plants that reached hungrily toward the light. "I still can't believe it, Olivia," said Mariana, her roommate and college best friend, over steaming mugs of café de olla in their tiny kitchen. "You're actually working with Harrison Ford?" "That guy's got a reputation," Mariana said, stirring her coffee with a hint of worry in her voice. "He's known for being a womanizer and treating his employees like disposable parts." Olivia swirled her mug slowly, her gaze focused on nothing in particular. "I know," she said calmly, "but this project could be a turning point in my career. Besides, I don't scare that easily." "Just be careful," Mariana warned. "I've heard when he sets his sights on a woman, he doesn't stop until he gets her." Her friend's words echoed in Olivia's mind as she made her way across the city on the bus. The scenery shifted from the crowded, noisy streets of her neighborhood to the wide, polished avenues where Ford Developments had its towering headquarters. At exactly 9 o'clock, Olivia stepped into Harrison's office. He was already there, pacing slightly as he talked on the phone, scanning a folder with one hand. He gestured for her to sit without pausing his call, wrapping it up a few moments later. "Good morning, Miss Bennett," he greeted her, finally hanging up. "On time today, I see." "I'm always on time when I don't have to cross half the city during rush hour," she replied with a faint smile. Harrison studied her quietly. Unlike the women he was used to, flawlessly made up and always in fashion-forward outfits, Olivia wore barely any makeup, letting her natural beauty shine, and her suit was simple yet tasteful. "I've been thinking about your proposal," he said, leaning forward. "I like where you're going with it, but I have concerns about the feasibility of a few elements." Over the next few weeks, Harrison and Olivia worked closely together. Every meeting became a push and pull between her artistic ideals and his business-driven realism. And yet, the tension only made Harrison respect her more. She wasn't just creative and beautiful. She stood her ground with a passion and intellect he rarely encountered in his world. "You should come to the charity gala this weekend," Harrison suggested one afternoon after they wrapped up a productive session. "There'll be some major investors there. It could be a great chance for you to meet some key players." Olivia hesitated. She knew attending would blur the line she'd been trying hard to keep between her work and personal life. "I'm not sure I have anything suitable to wear for that kind of event," she admitted. "That's not a problem," Harrison replied with a confident smile. "I can take care of that." "I don't need your generosity, Mr. Ford," she said, a touch of coolness in her tone. "If I decide to go, I'll do it on my own terms." He was taken aback. Most women he knew never turned down his gifts. "I didn't mean to offend you," he said sincerely. "I just wanted to make things easier." "I know," she said, softening a little, "but it's important to me to stay independent." The next day, an envelope appeared on Olivia's temporary desk. Inside was a formal invitation to the gala. No note, no expectations, just the invite. She smiled to herself, appreciating the quiet way Harrison respected her boundaries. That Saturday night, Harrison stood in the reception hall, checking the entrance every few minutes. When Olivia finally walked in, he was momentarily speechless. Her turquoise dress shimmered like the waters of a cenote, embroidered with patterns that echoed the craftsmanship of New Mexico. It was the perfect blend of heritage and sophistication, just like her designs. "You look absolutely stunning, Miss Bennett," Harrison said as he approached. "Thank you, Mr. Ford," she replied warmly. "You clean up nicely, too." Throughout the evening, Harrison watched as Olivia navigated the room with ease. Despite coming from a very different background, she held her own in conversations ranging from contemporary art to global markets. Her charisma and intelligence left people genuinely impressed. "Care to dance?" Harrison asked, extending his hand as a soft waltz filled the air. "Only if you promise not to step on my toes," she replied with a playful smile he hadn't seen before. As they moved across the floor in sync with the music, Harrison felt something shift. The usual walls between them seemed to fade. For the first time, Olivia looked genuinely at ease in his presence, and he let down his guard in return. "So, why architecture?" he asked, curious to know more than just her resume. Olivia met his eyes and took a breath. My grandfather was a bricklayer in New Mexico. He used to take me to his job sites when I was little. I loved watching how bricks and cement could become homes, places where stories would begin. She paused. When he passed away, I promised myself I'd design buildings that would honor his legacy and our roots. Her honesty struck a chord in Harrison. In that moment, with the music weaving around them and her words still hanging in the air, he knew what he felt for Olivia had moved far beyond a fleeting attraction. For the first time in a long while, Harrison Ford, the millionaire who usually got everything he wanted, was afraid he might not be enough for a woman. Ever since that night at the charity gala, something between him and Olivia had shifted. Their work meetings started spilling over into late afternoon coffees and casual dinners, where talk of blueprints and budgets turned into stories about childhood, dreams, and the moments that shaped them. One time, my dad wanted me to study medicine, Harrison admitted over dessert at a small restaurant in the Condesa district. When I told him I wanted to get into real estate, he didn't talk to me for months. Olivia raised her eyebrows. I always thought you came from a family of business moguls. Harrison gave her a half smile, tinged with nostalgia. Nope, my dad's a doctor, so is my grandfather. I was the first to break away from that. I bought my first piece of land with a loan after pawning the graduation watch my dad gave me. He was furious. And now? She asked. He's proud, I think. Not that he'd ever actually say it, Harrison chuckled. But enough about me. Tell me more about your roots. Olivia told him stories of growing up in New Mexico, of quiet Sundays listening to marimba in the town square, of her mother selling hand-embroidered textiles at the market, and of how the entire community chipped in to help pay for her education when she won a scholarship to the university in Los Angeles. That's why I can't let them down, she said. Every design I create is a way of giving back to the people who believed in me. Harrison listened, captivated. In his world of sharp deals and shallow relationships, Olivia's honesty and values felt like a breath of fresh air. As the weeks passed, admiration grew into something deeper. Harrison started inventing reasons to spend time with her outside of work. Site visits that could have easily been handled during business hours got pushed to the afternoons. Meetings with vendors conveniently ended near hidden spots in the city he wanted her to see. You should come with me to Teotihuacan this weekend, he suggested one Thursday. There's a plot of land nearby I'm considering. I'd really like your professional input. Olivia knew it wasn't just about the land, but she agreed anyway. The pull she felt toward Harrison was getting harder to resist, though she still held on to her caution. On Saturday, beneath the wide central plateau sky, they wandered among the ancient pyramids. Harrison couldn't stop looking at her, her straw hat casting a soft shadow over her face, her sundress dancing in the breeze. She looked like she belonged there, as timeless and stunning as the stones around them. Do you know what Teotihuacan means? Olivia asked, pausing at the top of the Pyramid of the Sun. Something like, the place where men become gods, right? Harrison replied, recalling the tour guide's explanation. She smiled. Some say that. Others translate it as City of the Gods, or Where the Gods Were Born. I like to think it's a place of transformation, a place where people find themselves. Harrison looked at her for a long moment, then reached for her hand. I think I've been changing, Olivia. Since I met you, I haven't felt like the same person. She didn't pull away, but her expression grew serious. Harrison, I don't know if this is a good idea. We work together. We come from completely different worlds. So what? He interrupted. When I'm with you, none of that matters. It's just you and me. As the sun dipped behind the pyramids, Harrison leaned in and kissed her. To his surprise, she kissed him back with a passion that left no doubt. Whatever fears she had, her feelings were just as real. That day in Teotihuacan marked the beginning of something new. Over the following months, Harrison pursued her with a sincerity that even his closest friends hadn't seen before. He didn't try to win her over with expensive gifts or grand gestures. He knew that with Olivia, what mattered was showing up as his true self. They explored parts of Los Angeles that even Olivia, a native, had never seen. They shared tacos on street corners and whispered over wine in the city's finest restaurants. Harrison began to fall in love with simplicity, while Olivia slowly let herself believe in a future she once thought was out of reach. Meanwhile, their joint project was coming to life. The cutting-edge development that fused traditional Mexican design with state-of-the-art sustainability was starting to draw attention. Industry magazines were already calling it one of the most exciting developments in Latin America. One October afternoon, exactly 6 months after they first met, Harrison invited Olivia to visit the construction site. "I want to show you something special," he told her, guiding her through a maze of steel beams and concrete columns. They arrived at what would eventually be the heart of the complex, a wide open space that, according to the plans, would become a lush interior courtyard inspired by the traditional patios of New Mexico. "Right here," Harrison said, pointing to the exact center of the space. "This is where I want to ask you something." Olivia gave him a puzzled look. "Ask me what?" Harrison took both her hands and drew a deep breath. "Olivia Bennett, these past few months with you have been the happiest of my life. I never imagined meeting someone who challenges me, inspires me, and makes me want to be a better version of myself every single day." Olivia's heart started pounding. She couldn't quite believe what was happening. "Harrison, Let me finish, please," he said with a nervous smile. "Before I met you, I thought success meant numbers, properties, contracts. But you showed me that real success is about finding someone to share it all with. Someone who sees you for who you truly are, not what you have." He pulled a small velvet box from the inside pocket of his blazer and dropped to one knee, right there on the dusty floor of the half-built dream they were creating together. "Olivia Bennett, in this place we imagined and built with our ideas and dreams, will you do me the honor of becoming my wife?" When he opened the box, a sapphire ring surrounded by tiny diamonds sparkled under the late afternoon light slipping through the beams above. Olivia felt her breath catch. Everything was happening so fast. Just 6 months ago, she was an unknown architect trying to find her place in a male-dominated industry. And now, the most sought-after businessman in Los Angeles was asking her to marry him in the very heart of the masterpiece they'd created together. "Harrison, this is..." She struggled to find her words. "Isn't this too soon?" His voice softened. "Only if you think it is." She looked into his eyes and saw something she'd never seen in any man before. A pure, genuine love laced with the fear of being turned away. In that moment, all her hesitation vanished. "It's not too soon when you know you found the right person," she said, tears welling up. "Yes, Harrison Ford, I will marry you." Harrison jumped to his feet, slid the ring onto her finger, and kissed her, deeply, tenderly, sealing a promise between them. News of their engagement spread quickly through both business and social circles. To many, it seemed like the classic story, the wealthy tycoon marrying a woman of humble roots. But those who knew them understood this was different. It was the coming together of two people who, despite their contrasting worlds, had found exactly what they were missing in one another. Wedding preparations began almost immediately. Harrison envisioned a grand celebration fit for the society pages, while Olivia was determined to include the traditions and people that had shaped her. "I want my people there, Harrison," she insisted during one of their talks about the guest list. "Not just the politicians and CEOs." "Of course, mi amor," he agreed without hesitation. "This is your wedding as much as mine. I want it to feel perfect for both of us." As the big day approached, Olivia found herself wrestling with doubts and insecurities. It wasn't just the idea of becoming the wife of one of Los Angeles's most powerful men that unnerved her. It was the private, more vulnerable side of what marriage would mean. One evening over dinner at her apartment, she found the courage to speak. "Harrison, there's something I need to tell you," she said, her voice slightly shaky. "Something important. You should know before we get married." He looked at her, suddenly serious. "You can tell me anything, Olivia. You know that." She took a deep breath. I've never..." The words caught in her throat. "I've never been with anyone. Not like that." Harrison stared at her, stunned, trying to fully understand. "You mean, you—" "Yes," she nodded. "I've always focused on my studies, my work, my community. Tradition means a lot to me. I wanted to wait for the right person and the right moment." Without saying a word, Harrison reached across the table, gently took her hand, and kissed it with so much tenderness it nearly brought her to tears. "I'm honored," he whispered, "and I promise, when that moment comes, it'll be everything you deserve." A weight lifted from Olivia's chest. In that quiet, beautiful moment, she knew without a doubt she'd made the right choice in saying yes. They were married in the Metropolitan Cathedral in front of more than 500 guests, from high-ranking officials and business leaders to the warm-hearted neighbors from Olivia's hometown in New Mexico. The bride's gown, designed by a well-known Mexican couturier, featured hand-embroidered details crafted by women from New Mexico, beautiful symbols of two worlds coming together, worlds that had once seemed impossible to reconcile. That night, as they danced their first waltz as husband and wife, Harrison leaned in and whispered into Olivia's ear, "I promise you, every day we spend together will be as magical as today. I'll do everything I can to be worthy of the love and trust you've given me." Neither of them could have imagined how quickly that promise would be put to the test. On their honeymoon, something deeply personal, Olivia's innocence, would reveal sides of each of them they hadn't even known existed. The Riviera Maya welcomed them with postcard-perfect views, clear turquoise waters, soft white sand, and sunshine that seemed endless. Harrison had reserved one of the most exclusive villas in the entire resort, a private retreat perched on a secluded peninsula, offering stunning Caribbean views from nearly every room, a private infinity pool, and 24/7 personalized service. It was the perfect setting for a honeymoon. Olivia stood on the balcony wrapped in a silk pareo, watching the sunset bleed across the sky, while Harrison wrapped up a final work call, something he had promised would be the last one for the trip. "All right, phone's off," he announced as he came up behind her and gently wrapped his arms around her waist. "For the next 2 weeks, I'm all yours." Olivia turned to face him, a soft mix of love and nerves in her expression. "You won't regret it. I mean, the project's at a really critical stage." Harrison smiled and touched her lips with his finger. "Guillermo's got it. Right now, the only thing that matters is you. Us. This moment." He kissed her gently, first her lips, then her neck. She responded, but he could feel a hint of tension in her body. "Are you okay?" he asked, pulling back slightly to look into her eyes. "Yes," she said with a breathy laugh. "I'm just a little nervous." "I want everything to be perfect." "It will be," Harrison assured her tenderly. "There's no rush. We have a whole lifetime ahead of us." That evening, after a candlelit dinner served on their private terrace, they returned to the bedroom. Harrison had arranged for the room to be decorated with rose petals and flickering candles. A chilled bottle of champagne sat in a silver ice bucket beside the bed. Olivia paused in the doorway, momentarily overwhelmed by the beauty of it all and by what was about to happen. "It's beautiful," she whispered. Harrison came over, took her hands in his, and looked into her eyes. "You're beautiful," he said, his voice low. "And I want you to know, if you're not ready, we can wait. There's no pressure, Olivia." She shook her head. "No, I want to be with you. I love you, Harrison." "I love you too," he replied, kissing her with a mix of deep affection and careful restraint. What followed was a moment of discovery, tender and full of emotion. Aware of Olivia's inexperience, Harrison was incredibly patient, guiding her gently through every step. Each touch, each kiss, carried weight and meaning. It wasn't just physical desire. Harrison felt something deeper, something sacred, knowing he was the first to explore this part of her heart. When they finally came together, Olivia felt a whirlwind of sensation. a moment of pain quickly giving way to an overwhelming sense of closeness and peace. In Harrison's arms, she experienced a new depth of love, something wordless but incredibly real. Later, wrapped in soft Egyptian cotton sheets, Harrison gently ran his fingers through her hair, still in awe of what they'd shared. "How is it even possible?" he murmured, more to himself than to her. "What do you mean?" Olivia asked, resting her head on his chest. "That someone as beautiful and brilliant as you has never, you know?" Olivia was quiet for a beat. "Where I come from, that matters. My mom always said that when that time came, it should be with someone who truly loved me. I guess I never found that person. Until you." Harrison looked at her with renewed admiration. In his world, where relationships were often transactional or shallow, Olivia's sincerity was something rare, something precious. "I'm honored," he said quietly, "and I swear you'll never regret choosing me." The days that followed felt like a dream. They explored hidden beaches, snorkeled among colorful coral reefs, walked hand in hand through the ruins of Tulum, and had deep conversations under starlit skies. But more than anything, they discovered each other, not just physically, but on a deeper emotional level. Harrison, who was used to shallow romances and women who played by high society rules, now found himself completely devoted to someone who broke every pattern he'd ever known. Olivia wasn't like anyone he'd met before, and he was falling more in love with her every day. Instead of feeling tied down, Harrison had discovered a kind of freedom in giving himself fully to Olivia, something deeper and more joyful than anything he'd known before. Their honeymoon was nearing its end. In just 2 days, they would be heading back to Los Angeles. He'd return to leading Ford developments, and she'd step back into her role as lead architect on the very project that had brought them together. But something inside Harrison had shifted, something he didn't yet fully understand. As they sat quietly on the beach, watching the sun melt into the horizon, Harrison broke the peaceful silence between them. "I've been thinking about the future," he said softly. Olivia turned to him, curiosity in her eyes. "What kind of future?" "Our future," he replied, drawing small circles in the sand with his finger. "For the longest time, I thought marriage was just a social expectation, something you eventually do because it's part of the plan when you're in my position." "And now?" Olivia asked, already sensing the change in his tone. "Now I see it for what it really is. Waking up next to someone you love, building something meaningful together, having each other's backs through everything." He paused and looked at her. "I want us to have a family, Olivia." The words hung in the air like a gentle promise. Her heart skipped a beat. "I want that too, Harrison. I really do. But I'm not sure I'm ready yet. I'd like to finish the project first, settle into my career a little more." Harrison squeezed her hand. "Of course, there's no rush. We've got time. I just wanted you to know it's something I really want." Olivia leaned in and kissed him softly. "You're going to be an amazing dad." That night, while dining at one of the resort's elegant restaurants, Harrison's phone buzzed. Despite his earlier promises, he answered it. "Sorry, just a minute," he said, stepping away from the table. The call went longer than expected, and when he returned, his expression had shifted. "Is everything okay?" Olivia asked, noticing his change in mood. Harrison hesitated. "There's a minor issue with the project. Nothing serious, but they need my input before moving forward." "What kind of issue?" she pressed, knowing it concerned her too. "It's complicated," he said, avoiding her eyes. "I'll explain everything once we're back in Los Angeles." The rest of dinner was quiet. An awkward tension had settled between them. Harrison, who was usually so open with her about work, suddenly seemed like he was holding something back. Back at the villa, while Harrison showered, Olivia couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Driven by instinct, she picked up his phone and checked the recent calls. The last one hadn't come from Guillermo. It was from Vanessa Torres, a city councilwoman known not only for her political influence, but also for a past romantic connection with Harrison, if the rumors were true. When Harrison stepped onto the terrace, freshly showered, He found Olivia sitting silently, her face unreadable. "Is everything all right?" he asked, sitting beside her. "I don't know," she said quietly. "You tell me. Why did Vanessa Torres call you?" Harrison froze. "You went through my phone?" "Just answer the question," she said, her tone cool and steady. He let out a heavy sigh. "We need her approval to move forward. There's a zoning issue we didn't anticipate." "Then why lie? Why say it was Guillermo?" she asked, frustration rising. "I didn't want to ruin our time here," he said after a pause, "and I knew you'd be uncomfortable knowing she was involved. I figured you'd heard the stories about us." "Are they true?" Olivia asked, cutting straight to the point. "Were you with her?" "It was years ago," Harrison admitted. "Long before I met you, and it didn't end well, which is why I'm worried about her role in this now." Olivia stood, clearly upset. "What else are you hiding from me, Harrison? If we're going to build a life together, I need to know I can trust you." He stood too, taking her hands in his. "Olivia, look at me," he said firmly. "I love you more than anything. Yes, I've had relationships in the past. Some meant nothing, some ended badly, but what we have is different. You're my wife, the woman I want to build a family with." She held his gaze, searching his eyes for honesty. And deep down, despite her anger, she knew he was telling the truth. "I don't care about your past, Harrison," she said softly. "I care about right now, about our future. I just need to know that you'll be honest with me, especially when it comes to things that affect us both." "I promise," he said, pulling her into a tight embrace. "No more secrets." But that night, when they made love, there was something raw and real between them, a sense of reconnection, of walls being torn down and trust slowly being rebuilt. And Harrison knew deep in his heart that something essential had shifted between them, for good. The vulnerability they had shared and the truths they had revealed to one another had built a bond stronger than either of them had expected. As Olivia slept peacefully beside him, Harrison stared up at the ceiling, his thoughts swirling. He never imagined that a woman who had never been with anyone else could teach him more about love, trust, and authenticity than all his past relationships combined. In that quiet moment, he made a promise to himself to be worthy of her trust, to build a relationship grounded in honesty and mutual respect, and to never let anything or anyone come between them, not even the ghosts of his own past mistakes. With that promise etched into his heart, he finally drifted off to sleep, unaware that the real test of their marriage was just beginning. Their private jet touched down at Los Angeles' International Airport in the late afternoon. As the plane taxied along the runway, Olivia gazed out the window at the sprawling cityscape that now looked so different from the tropical paradise they had just left behind. The bubble of bliss they had lived in for the past 2 weeks was about to pop. "Ready to get back to the real world?" Harrison asked, squeezing her hand. Olivia gave him a wistful smile. "Is anyone ever really ready for that?" A car was waiting for them on the tarmac. As the driver loaded their luggage, Harrison checked his messages, his brow furrowing as he scrolled through his phone. "Everything okay?" Olivia asked. "Nothing urgent," he said, slipping the phone into his pocket. "Tonight is just about us. We'll deal with everything else tomorrow." The familiar chaos of city traffic welcomed them back as they crawled along Paseo de la Reforma. Olivia stared out the window, thinking about how quickly her life had changed. Just a few months ago, she was a talented but largely unknown architect, trying to break through in a male-dominated industry. Now she was married to Harrison Ford, one of the country's most powerful businessmen, and leading the design of a project that could launch her into a whole new league. The car finally pulled up to Harrison's sprawling mansion in Beverly Hills, a home that now technically belonged to both of them, though it didn't yet feel like hers. They had agreed to stay there while the project was underway, and only then decide where they wanted to build a life together. "Welcome home, Mrs. Ford," Harrison said warmly, helping her out of the car. A chill ran down her spine hearing that name. She still wasn't used to it. The staff greeted them with polite efficiency, whisking away their bags and letting them know dinner would be ready in an hour. Everything ran like clockwork, so unlike the cozy, chaotic charm of the apartment she had shared with Mariana. "I need to call my parents," Olivia said once they were alone. "I promised I'd let them know when we got back." "Of course," Harrison nodded. "I'll hop in the shower." She headed to the study for some privacy. The call was short but warm. She told her parents the honeymoon had been wonderful and promised to visit them in New Mexico soon. She left out any mention of the tension that had surfaced, of the conversation about Vanessa Torres. Some things felt too personal, even to share with those she loved most. After hanging up, she decided to check her work email. There were dozens of messages waiting, mostly about the project. But one in particular stood out. It was from Vanessa Torres, urgently requesting a meeting to discuss critical issues related to the development. A flicker of unease crept in. Why was the councilwoman contacting her directly, and why didn't she specify what those issues were? Olivia was so deep in thought she didn't hear Harrison come in. "Everything okay with your parents?" he asked, now dressed in linen pants and a relaxed button-down shirt. Startled, she quickly closed the email. "Yes, they're good," she answered, maybe a little too fast. "I was just going through a few work messages." Harrison stepped behind her and gently rubbed her shoulders. "Don't let work pull you in on our first night back," he said, kissing her neck. "Tomorrow's for that." Olivia nodded, deciding not to bring up the email. Not tonight. She didn't want their first evening home to spiral into tension. Tomorrow, when things were calmer, she'd talk to him about it, with a clearer head. Dinner had a laid-back feel, with Harrison sharing stories from past trips and tossing around ideas for their future. Olivia listened with a soft smile, but part of her mind kept drifting back to that email from Vanessa and what it could mean for both their project and their marriage. The next morning, reality hit them fast. Harrison's calendar was packed with meetings, and Olivia had to catch up with the architecture team that had been overseeing progress during their honeymoon. "I'll see you at lunch," Harrison said as they parted ways in the lobby of Ford Developments. "There's something important we need to talk about." Olivia nodded, wondering if that something important had anything to do with Vanessa Torres and the email she hadn't yet brought up. The morning flew by in a blur of blueprints, reports, and technical briefings. Overall, the project was on track, only needing a few minor tweaks. Her team welcomed her back with sincere respect, fully aware of how crucial her talent and vision were to the project's success. Just before lunch, as she walked down the hall toward Harrison's office, Olivia suddenly found herself face to face with Vanessa Torres. The city councilwoman, striking and poised in her early 40s, offered a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Mrs. Ford, what a coincidence," Vanessa said, extending a hand. "I was just coming to find you." Olivia shook her hand firmly, determined not to show even a hint of unease. "Councilwoman Torres, it's a pleasure to meet you in person." "I'm glad you received my message." "I did." "Then you know we have some urgent matters to discuss." Just then, Harrison stepped out of his office and stopped short at the sight of them. "I wasn't expecting you until 3, he said, his voice carefully neutral. "I moved our meeting up," Vanessa replied with ease. "And I was lucky enough to run into your wife. Maybe the 3 of us could have lunch together? We could go over the project details while we eat." Harrison glanced at Olivia. She kept her expression unreadable, though inside she felt a swirl of tension and curiosity. "Of course," he said at last. "I had a reservation for 2 at the mansion, but I'm sure they can make it work." The 3 of them made their way to the restaurant in awkward silence. Once seated and after placing their orders, Vanessa wasted no time. "There's a serious issue with the project," she said, looking at Harrison. "The Urban Planning Commission has identified irregularities with your construction permits." "What kind of irregularities?" Olivia asked, narrowing her eyes. "All documents were submitted under current regulations." Vanessa's smile was polite but smug. "The regulations changed while you were away. There's now a requirement for an additional cultural impact study due to the site's proximity to newly protected heritage zones. That's ridiculous, Harrison cut in. The land isn't even near any official historical sites. The list of protected areas was recently expanded, Vanessa said coolly. Luckily for you, I can help fast-track the approval process, if the project includes some adjustments the Commission considers necessary. Olivia and Harrison exchanged a quick glance. They both understood what she was really saying. Vanessa was using her position to push changes, likely benefiting herself or her political allies. What kind of changes are we talking about? Olivia asked calmly. Vanessa pulled a folder from her bag and slid it across the table. Nothing drastic. Just a revision to your list of suppliers for key materials and a dedicated space for a cultural center overseen by the foundation I chair. Harrison opened the folder, scanning the contents. His jaw tightened. These suppliers are charging well above market rates, he said. And the cultural center you're proposing would take up nearly 15% of the commercial area. Vanessa's smile didn't waver. That's the cost of doing business in this city, Harrison. I thought you knew that by now. Olivia observed the exchange closely. This wasn't just politics. It was personal. The unresolved history between Harrison and Vanessa was bleeding into their professional world, and it was starting to threaten more than just blueprints and permits. We're going to need some time to review these suggestions, Olivia said, stepping in firmly. You'll have our response within 48 hours, Councilwoman. Vanessa turned to her, her eyes gleaming with fresh interest, as if for the first time she saw Olivia as a serious opponent. Of course, Mrs. Ford. Just remember, time matters. The Commission meets in 3 days to vote on the continuation of several projects, including yours. After a tense lunch, where the conversation eventually shifted to safer topics, Vanessa said her goodbyes, promising to wait for their response. Once they were alone in the car heading back to the office, Olivia exhaled sharply. That woman is a snake! Harrison let out a long sigh. I know. And unfortunately, I think this is personal. She's using the project to get back at me. Get back at you? Why? He paused, clearly weighing how much to say. Things didn't end well between us, he finally admitted. She wanted something serious, and I didn't. When she got involved with her now husband, a powerful political figure, she told me someday I'd pay for what she called using her. Olivia took in his words, feeling a strange mix of sympathy for him and worry for the future of the project. So what do we do now? Harrison reached over and took her hand, his voice steady. We don't give in to blackmail. We'll figure out another way. I promise. What neither of them realized at the time was that Vanessa Torres was only just getting started. The weeks ahead would challenge not only their professional ambitions, but the very foundation of their young marriage. The following days were a whirlwind of strategy sessions, legal consultations, and contingency planning. Harrison reached out to key contacts within the city government, while Olivia teamed up with their legal advisors to identify loopholes in the newly updated regulations. We've got two main options, Guillermo said during a tense meeting. We can either agree to Torres's demands, which would mean millions in added costs and compromising the integrity of our original design, or we can go the legal route and challenge the retroactive application of the new regulations. That could take months, Carlos Mendez, Ford Development's lead attorney, warned. Meanwhile, construction would be on hold and the financial losses would add up fast. Harrison, seated at the head of the table, looked grim. Olivia sat beside him, quietly watching the room. She knew some of the team members blamed this mess, at least in part, on her connection to Harrison. There's a third option, she said suddenly, drawing everyone's attention. She paused, then added, We redesigned certain aspects of the project so it meets the new requirements without caving to Vanessa's personal agenda. Harrison looked at her, intrigued. Is that even possible? Olivia nodded. Technically, yes. The new rules require a cultural impact study and efforts to preserve elements of historical value. If we incorporate architectural details that reflect the neighborhood's history, We could argue that we're complying with the spirit of the law without giving in to her specific demands. A flicker of hope lit up in Harrison's eyes. How long would you need to draft this redesign? 3 days, Olivia replied confidently. I already have a few ideas. Harrison glanced around the table, then back at Olivia, clearly impressed. Let's do it, he said. Carlos, get our legal arguments ready to support this direction. Guillermo, keep the teams on standby so we can get back to work as soon as we get the green light. The meeting wrapped with a new sense of momentum. As everyone filed out, Harrison held Olivia back for a moment. You're amazing, you know that? He said, kissing her softly. She smiled, but her face turned serious. Harrison, there's something I need to ask you. Anything. Is there anything else I should know about you and Vanessa? Anything that could affect how we handle this? Harrison sighed and motioned for her to sit beside him. It was 5 years ago. We were together for about 6 months. At the time, I was completely focused on work. I told her from the start that I wasn't looking for anything serious. But she was, Olivia said gently. He nodded. Yeah. Eventually, she started talking about the future, about getting serious. I reminded her of where I stood, and she said she understood. But then I found out she was using her position to give favorable treatment to some of my projects. Without your knowledge? Olivia asked. Yes, he said firmly. The moment I found out, I ended things. I didn't want my business tied to backdoor favors or political games. It got ugly. She accused me of using her, of being incapable of love. There were some harsh words on both sides. Olivia sat in silence for a moment, connecting the dots. And now that you're married to me, now that you've proven you are capable of love and commitment, she sees this as the perfect chance to strike back. I think that's exactly what's happening, Harrison said quietly. It's not just the project she's trying to sabotage, it's our marriage, Olivia said, gripping Harrison's hands. But she won't win. We'll get through this, Harrison. Together. The next few days were a whirlwind. Olivia barely slept, pouring every ounce of energy into perfecting the redesign that could save the project. Harrison, meanwhile, rallied his political and media contacts, building public pressure in their favor. The night before they were due to present the revised proposal to the Urban Planning Commission, Olivia was in the mansion's study, going over final design details. That's when she heard the doorbell ring, a rare occurrence, especially so late and without notice. A few minutes later, Martina, the housekeeper, appeared at the door. Ma'am, there's a young woman at the door asking to see you. She says it's urgent. Her name is Chloe Rojas. Olivia frowned, trying to recall if she knew the name. Please bring her to the small sitting room. I'll be there in a moment. When Olivia walked into the room, she found a young woman, mid-20s, dressed smartly but clearly anxious, already standing. Mrs. Ford? The woman asked. Thank you for seeing me. How can I help you, Ms. Rojas? Olivia said cautiously, keeping a professional distance. Chloe took a breath. I work as an assistant to Councilwoman Torres, she began. What I'm about to tell you could cost me my job, but I think you deserve to know. A chill ran down Olivia's spine. Go on. She's been manipulating the process from the very beginning, Chloe said. The new regulations were tailored specifically to target your project, but it doesn't stop there. And she hesitated. Please, Olivia urged gently. Tell me everything. She's planning something for the fundraising gala tomorrow, Chloe continued. She's hired someone to approach your husband, to trap him in a compromising situation, something staged for you to find out about. It's all been carefully set up. Olivia's chest tightened. The cold precision of the plan left her momentarily speechless. Why are you telling me this? She asked quietly. Chloe looked down. My sister went through something similar. Her marriage fell apart because of a setup like this. I couldn't live with myself if I let that happen to someone else. Olivia studied her closely, searching for signs of deceit, but all she saw was fear and honesty. Thank you for your courage, Ms. Rojas, Olivia said sincerely. Is there anything else I should know? Chloe nodded. Torres has also been digging into your past in New Mexico. She's looking for anything she can use against you. A cold shiver ran through Olivia. She had nothing to hide, but the thought of Vanessa prying into her roots, possibly reaching out to people from her past, was deeply unsettling. I understand, she said, maintaining her composure. How can I reach you if I need to follow up? Chloe handed her a card with a handwritten number. This is my personal line. Be careful how and when you use it. After Chloe left, Olivia remained seated in the room, trying to process everything. Her first instinct was to call Harrison. He was out at a business dinner, but she stopped herself. She needed time to think, to strategize. This wasn't just about business anymore. It was personal. It was war. Vanessa Torres wasn't just threatening their project. She was aiming straight at the heart of their marriage. How they responded to this would determine everything. With renewed focus, Olivia returned to the study. The redrawing of plans still needed to be finished, but now she also had to prepare for a different kind of confrontation. Vanessa had underestimated her. Olivia Bennett DeFord wasn't just a millionaire's wife. She was a woman of deep values, sharp intellect, and grit forged through years of pushing forward in a world that hadn't always welcomed her. Raised on the traditions of New Mexico, tested by a male-dominated industry, she had earned every inch of ground she stood on. As she looked over the plans she and Harrison had brought to life, Olivia made a decision. She wouldn't let anyone, not even someone as powerful as Vanessa Torres, tear down what they'd built. When Harrison returned from dinner, well past midnight, he found her waiting in the main sitting room. One look at her face told him something serious had happened. What is it? He asked, loosening his tie as he sat down across from her. Olivia calmly told him everything. Chloe's visit, the warning, the planned setup at the fundraiser, every single detail. Olivia watched Harrison closely as she recounted everything Chloe had told her, searching for any flicker of guilt or discomfort. But all she saw was pure disbelief and genuine concern. I can't believe how far she's willing to go, Harrison said when she finished. Using our marriage as a weapon, that's a new low. The real question is, Olivia replied calmly, what are we going to do about it? Tomorrow's the commission presentation and the fundraiser. Harrison stood and began pacing, clearly running through scenarios in his mind. We need to fight back, he finally said, but smart, not with brute force. This has to be strategic. That night, they mapped out a two-pronged plan. On the professional front, Olivia would present her newly revised project design to the commission. On the personal front, they would turn the tables on Vanessa's setup. If Chloe's right, Vanessa is counting on me falling for the trap, and on you catching me in the act, Harrison said, thinking out loud. She wants to humiliate you and blow up our marriage. Then let's do the exact opposite, Olivia said, her voice steady with resolve. Let's show her how solid we really are. The next morning, they walked into the offices of the Urban Planning Commission side by side. Olivia wore a coral-colored suit that complemented her warm complexion, and Harrison looked sharp in a tailored dark suit. Together, they looked every bit the power couple, and heads turned as they moved through the lobby. Vanessa Torres was already inside, chatting with a few commission members. The smug smile on her face flickered for a second when she saw Harrison and Olivia enter, united and confident. Good morning, Councilwoman Torres. Olivia greeted her with a cool, graceful smile. We're ready to present our proposal. The session began right on time. Olivia took the floor and delivered her presentation with poise and clarity. She explained how the redesign incorporated elements that celebrated the neighborhood's cultural roots, traditional-style facades, public plazas honoring local heritage, and even a small museum dedicated to the area's history. As you can see, she said, gesturing toward the plans and digital models, this updated design doesn't just comply with the new guidelines, it embraces them. We've turned a potential limitation into a powerful opportunity to enrich the community. The room was attentive. Even the skeptics on the panel appeared intrigued, some nodding in approval. But Vanessa's expression remained unreadable. An impressive presentation, Mrs. Ford, she said once Olivia finished. However, I still don't see a designated space for the cultural foundation I mentioned previously. That's because it's not required, Harrison replied, his tone respectful but firm. The law calls for cultural preservation and celebration, not mandatory allocations to specific foundations. And as my wife just demonstrated, our revised design more than meets the legal expectations. A tense silence followed. Everyone present could sense the quiet power struggle unfolding in the room. Then Francisco Aguilar, the commission's chairman, a respected, no-nonsense man, spoke up. Mrs. Ford's redesign is exceptional, he said. It not only follows the letter of the regulation but captures its true intent. I recommend we proceed to a vote. The vote was cast. 7 in favor, 2 against. One of the opposing votes came from Vanessa herself. The project was officially approved to move forward. As they gathered their documents and prepared to leave, Vanessa approached them, her smile icy. Congratulations, she said. You've won this round. But the war isn't over. There's no war, Vanessa, Harrison said calmly. Just a project that will benefit this city. I hope you'll come to see it that way. I'll see you tonight at the fundraiser, she replied, brushing off his words. Should be interesting. Back in the car, Harrison pulled Olivia into his arms. You did it. You were brilliant. We did it, she corrected him gently. But it's not over yet. We still have tonight. That evening, as they got ready for the gala, they reviewed every piece of their plan. According to Chloe, Vanessa had hired a woman to try and seduce Harrison in public, hoping Olivia would catch them in a scene designed to look scandalous. You're sure you'll recognize her? Olivia asked as she dabbed a touch of makeup on her cheeks, studying herself in the mirror. Chloe said she'd be blonde, wearing a red dress and a pearl necklace, Harrison replied, adjusting his bow tie. Let's just hope she's not subtle. This shouldn't be hard, Harrison said, his voice low. But what if Chloe's been playing us? What if this is part of the setup? He moved behind Olivia, meeting her eyes in the mirror as he placed his hands gently on her shoulders. Then we adapt, he said. Together. Olivia turned to face him directly. Promise me one thing, Harrison. Anything. No matter what happens tonight, we don't let it pull us apart. We don't give Vanessa the satisfaction of driving a wedge between us. I promise, he replied without hesitation, his voice steady. Nothing and no one is coming between us. The fundraiser was being held at the elegant San Regis Hotel in the heart of the city. The guest list included the elite of Mexican society, politicians, business moguls, celebrities, and cultural figures. Harrison and Olivia arrived fashionably late, ensuring their entrance would be noticed. Olivia was radiant, in an emerald green designer gown that hugged her figure and glowed against her sun-kissed skin. Harrison stood beside her in a perfectly tailored tux, radiating quiet power and calm confidence. Together, they looked like the picture of success and marital bliss. Across the ballroom, Vanessa Torres watched them closely, a champagne glass in hand and a calculating look on her face. Her husband, a prominent political figure with presidential aspirations, stood beside her, seemingly unaware of the silent tension unfolding. There she is, Harrison murmured, leaning into Olivia as if whispering something affectionate. And the woman in the red dress is at the bar, watching us. Olivia gave the slightest nod. Showtime. Over the next hour, they executed their plan with perfect precision. Harrison casually drifted away from Olivia and made his way to the bar. As expected, the woman in red approached him almost immediately, striking up a flirtatious conversation. From across the room, Olivia kept one eye on them while engaging in polite conversation with a group of donors. She noticed Vanessa subtly shifting through the crowd, positioning herself where she'd have a clear view of Harrison and the mystery woman. As planned, Harrison allowed the interaction to progress. The woman touched his arm lightly, laughed a little too loudly, leaned in close. To a casual onlooker, it might have seemed like he was falling into the trap. At just the right moment, as the woman leaned in to whisper something in Harrison's ear, Olivia walked up to them. But instead of the dramatic confrontation Vanessa had hoped for, Olivia smiled warmly at the woman. "Mind if I steal my husband for a second?" she said, her tone light but poised. "There's someone who wants to say hello to both of us." The woman in red hesitated, visibly caught off guard, then quickly stepped away. "Of course." Olivia slipped her hand into Harrison's arm, and they walked together straight toward Vanessa, who now looked noticeably rattled. "Councilwoman Torres," Olivia greeted her, her smile bright. "What a lovely evening, don't you think? Harrison and I were just talking about how grateful we are for a marriage built on trust and transparency. It's really priceless, don't you agree?" For the first time since they'd known her, Vanessa looked genuinely speechless. "Absolutely," she finally replied, her tone strained. "May that trust last." "Oh, it will," Harrison said, wrapping an arm around Olivia's waist. "In fact, we've got something to share. We're considering launching our own nonprofit, focused on providing scholarships to young architects from underprivileged communities. We'd love to have your support." It was a brilliant move. Not only had they dismantled Vanessa's scheme, they were forcing her into a corner, turning her into either an ally or a public opponent of a noble cause. Saying no would cost her political capital. Vanessa forced a smile. "That sounds admirable. My assistant will follow up with you." "Perfect," Olivia replied smoothly. "Oh, and please give our regards to Chloe. She's a very dedicated young woman." At the mention of her assistant's name, Vanessa's smile faltered. Just for a second. It was enough. In that moment, she realized they had outplayed her from the beginning. The rest of the night passed without incident. Harrison and Olivia moved through the room with effortless grace, mingling, dancing, and radiating genuine love and unity. By the time they returned home in the early hours of the morning, both were exhausted but deeply satisfied. "Did you see her face when you brought up Chloe?" Harrison laughed, tossing his bow tie onto the coffee table. "That was priceless." Olivia chuckled, but her smile faded as a more serious look crossed her face. "We won this round," Olivia said, curling up beside Harrison. "But I doubt she'll give up that easily." "I know," Harrison replied, nodding. "But we've proven something important. Together, we're stronger than any scheme she throws at us." Olivia rested her head on his shoulder, reflecting on everything they had been through. From their first professional meeting to becoming husband and wife, they had faced challenges that might have torn other couples apart. "You know what's funny?" she said softly. "Vanessa tried to break us, but all she really did was bring us closer." Harrison leaned in and kissed her gently. "Sometimes it takes adversity to show us just how strong we really are." That night, as they made love with a tenderness and passion deepened by the trials they had faced, they both knew their bond had become unshakable, something neither of them could have imagined when they first met just a year ago. 6 months later, their project was moving ahead at full speed. The first phase of construction was nearly done, and architecture and urban development outlets were already calling it a model for blending tradition with modern design. It was a crisp spring morning when Olivia stepped into the garden, a warm mug of tea in her hands. Harrison had left early for an important meeting, and she cherished these quiet moments alone to take it all in. Vanessa Torres had since vanished from the political scene after being swept up in a corruption scandal, completely unrelated to them. Karma, her mother would have said, had done its work. But what the whole ordeal left behind was a powerful reminder. When faced with pressure, unity is everything. Olivia smiled as she recalled Harrison's stunned expression 3 months earlier when she shared the news that would change their lives forever. "I'm pregnant," she had told him one evening over dinner on the terrace. Harrison had literally dropped his fork, staring at her with a mixture of shock and pure joy. "Are you sure?" he had whispered. "Absolutely. We're going to be parents this fall." The way he reacted told Olivia everything she needed to know. This man, once known for his playboy past, had become someone capable of real love, real commitment. Now, as she gently cradled her growing belly, she thought about the future. They had decided that after the baby arrived, they would leave the mansion and build a new home, designed by Olivia herself. A home that wouldn't belong to Harrison's past or hers, but a place where their new chapter would begin. They had also gone ahead with creating the educational foundation they had mentioned that night to Vanessa. It hadn't just been a clever deflection, it had become a real cause. They truly believed in giving young talent from underserved communities a shot at something better. The sound of a car pulling into the driveway broke her train of thought. Harrison was back much earlier than expected. She walked out to greet him. "How was the meeting?" she asked as he stepped out of the car. Harrison's expression was unreadable. "There was no meeting," he said with a sly smile. "It was just an excuse." "An excuse? Get in," he said. "I've got a surprise for you." Nearly an hour later, after refusing to tell her where they were going, Harrison pulled up to a large piece of land just outside the city. It was breathtaking. Rolling hills, a panoramic view of the mountains, and a sense of peace that wrapped around the place like a blanket. "What do you think?" he asked as they walked the property. Olivia looked around in awe. "It's beautiful. But what is this?" "It's ours," Harrison said, smiling. "I bought it this morning. This is where we'll build our home, designed by you. And over there," he pointed toward a shaded corner of the land, "there's a natural spring. I thought we could incorporate it into the design, something symbolic, something alive." Olivia felt tears welling up. It wasn't just the pregnancy hormones. It was the deep, overwhelming sense of being truly seen, deeply understood. "It's perfect," she whispered, wrapping her arms around him. "Absolutely perfect." Later that evening, as they had dinner on the terrace of the mansion they would soon leave behind, Harrison handed her an envelope. "One last surprise," he said, grinning. Inside were plane tickets. "To New Mexico," he explained. "I thought we could spend a few days with your parents. I want to know more about where you come from, what shaped the woman I love, and I think they should be the first to know they're going to be grandparents." Olivia looked at him, love radiating from her eyes. This was the real Harrison Ford, not the cold businessman people gossiped about, but the man who loved her fully and genuinely, who honored her roots, and who knew what truly mattered. "I love you," she said simply. "And I love you," Harrison replied, "more than I ever thought I could." Their week in New Mexico felt like a healing balm. Olivia saw her hometown through Harrison's eyes, and he, with genuine curiosity, dove into the traditions, flavors, and culture that had shaped the woman he loved. Her parents, initially cautious around their wealthy son-in-law, quickly warmed up to him. His sincerity and the love he had for their daughter were impossible to ignore. The news of the pregnancy was met with happy tears and celebrations that spilled into the entire community. "Your mom's been teaching me how to weave," Harrison confessed one afternoon as they lounged in the courtyard of her family home. "She wants me to make a zarap for the baby." Olivia laughed at the image of her powerful husband learning the delicate art of traditional New Mexican weaving. "And how's it going?" "Terribly," he admitted with a grin. "But I'm stubborn. By the time the baby gets here, I'll at least have something halfway decent." Those days in New Mexico quietly solidified a promise between them. Their child would grow up knowing both worlds, the privilege they now lived in, and the deep-rooted traditions and values that had shaped Olivia. Back in Los Angeles, life picked up its usual fast pace. The development project was moving along as scheduled. Olivia had started sketching ideas for their future home, and much of their free time was now taken up by baby prep. One afternoon, while Olivia was working in her home studio, Harrison walked in with a serious look on his face. "I just got an interesting call," he said, taking a seat across from her. "It was Carlos Hayes, Vanessa Torres's husband." Olivia put down her pencil, suddenly alert. "What did he want?" "He's trying to cut ties with her. Apparently, she's finally crashed and burned politically, and he wants to distance himself to protect his own image. He asked for our support in his campaign for mayor." "What did you say?" she asked, watching him closely. "I told him we'd think about it," Harrison replied. "But honestly, I don't know if we want to get involved in that kind of political mess." I'd rather focus our energy on projects that truly help people, not on power plays. Olivia smiled, proud of the man he had become. I agree. I think our education foundation will have a more lasting and meaningful impact than any political alliance. Harrison stood and walked over to her, placing a hand on her belly. I want to build a better world for this little one, he said softly. A world where success is measured by the good you do, not the power you gain. Olivia placed her hand over his. We'll build it together. The project that had brought them together officially opened one October afternoon, just weeks before the baby was due. It was a stunning complex that perfectly blended traditional Mexican architecture with cutting-edge sustainable design. The press called it a model for the future of urban development, and it had already won several international awards. During the grand opening, Harrison surprised everyone by announcing that the development would be named after Olivia, honoring both her and the meaning of her name, wisdom. This project is the result of the wisdom and vision of one extraordinary woman, he told the crowd. A woman who didn't just transform this space, she transformed my life. Standing there, visibly pregnant and glowing, Olivia couldn't hold back her tears. Their journey hadn't been easy, but every challenge had only brought them closer. 2 weeks later, Ethan Ford Bennett was born, a beautiful baby boy who carried the best of both his parents. Holding him together in their hospital room, Harrison and Olivia shared a look that spoke volumes. You know, Harrison said softly, gently brushing the top of Ethan's head, when I met you, I thought I had it all. Money, success, power. But I was wrong. I didn't have anything that really mattered. And now? Olivia asked, her smile tired but full of joy. Harrison looked at her, then at their son, his whole world in one frame. Now I have everything. A year later, Harrison and Olivia moved into their new home, a house designed entirely by her. It was the perfect mix of modern elegance and cultural roots, filled with open spaces, natural materials, and architectural touches that paid homage to both contemporary design and Olivia's New Mexican heritage. As Harrison had once dreamed, the natural spring on the property had been turned into a peaceful pond at the heart of a courtyard, just like the traditional patios from her childhood. It was their home, their legacy, and the beginning of a new chapter built on love, wisdom, and everything they had overcome together. That spring afternoon, they celebrated Ethan's first birthday right there in the courtyard. Olivia's parents, who now lived nearby in a house they had built just for them, were there, along with Mariana and her boyfriend Guillermo, and a handful of close friends. As Olivia watched Harrison laughing and playing with their son, she couldn't help but reflect on the incredible journey her life had taken over the past 2 years, from being an unknown architect to becoming a wife, a mother, and now a respected professional in her own right. What's on your mind? Harrison asked, walking over with Ethan in his arms. Us, Olivia replied, where we started, and where we are now. Harrison smiled, instantly knowing what she meant. Out of all the projects I've taken on in my life, he said, glancing around at the home they had built, the child in his arms, and the friends and family surrounding them, this life, is by far the most successful. Olivia gently took Ethan from his arms and slipped her free hand into Harrison's. And we're only just getting started, she said, her smile filled with promise. Together, they walked toward the center of the courtyard, where the spring they'd built their home around flowed quietly and endlessly. Like the love that had grown between them, it had sprung up unexpectedly, natural, unforced, but had since become the heart of everything they shared. It nourished the life they were building, deepening and growing stronger with each passing day.